We are leaving the Polish town of Przemyśl, which is on the border with Ukraine. We're a long way from Kyiv. It's a big country, Ukraine. But I have to say, it's very well appointed. It's a nice sleeper. I've even got some message about Ukrainian cuisine and a picture of two chefs who are going to delight us with a dinner. I mean, this is a country at war, but everything seems to be working pretty well. I won't say it's entirely better than a British train, but I will. It's entirely better than most British trains. And I'm on a very special sort of train, really, because this is the way to get to Kyiv. So it doesn't matter who you are. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, has been on this train. Boris Johnson came on this train, and now I've come on it. So that's really set the lid on it. Now the Russians will be aiming everything they've got at it. Don't laugh, Stephen. It's not funny. But as I say, this is not about me. It's obviously, as far as I'm concerned, it's about me. It's really that I am greedily curious, and I love the idea of having this opportunity as a guest of the government to A, talk about mental health in a war zone, which is a very special kind of subject, and B, to see what life is like in a city that is constantly under threat of bombardment. The story I often tell about war and mental health and our misunderstanding of it is when I was asked to see if I could do a draft of a new film about the dam busters raid at Guy Gibson and his squadron with the bouncing bomb. And I spoke to this marvellous woman who had actually had an affair with Guy Gibson, so they had to conduct it in secret. And I'd been told by someone from Bomber Command's museum, oh, I hope you're not going to fill it with all sorts of soppy modern nonsense. These were young, stiff, upper-lip British people. They weren't like us. They just got on with the job with grim determination and no nonsense. And I said, okay. Anyway, she said, well, mostly after, we'd enjoyed ourselves, we would get in a car and go for a drive, and he would turn into a farm lane and drop his head onto the steering wheel and sob, and I would rub the back of his head. I said, sorry, this is Guy Gibson VC, one of only 2 members ever of Bomber Command to get a Victoria Cross. He was sobbing. I said, oh, they were all totally strung out. They were kept awake on speed, on drugs, Benzedrine and things like that. And on top of that, they knew when they went for a successful operation, that meant they were raining fire on cities. And they knew what they were doing, but they were obeying their orders and doing what they were told to do. But it destroyed their minds, some of them. I thought, well, that's strange, because no one talked about it then. I happen to have had, for most of my life, a condition called bipolar disorder, which seems not to have been triggered by anything from outside particularly. It seems to be something I was born with. But there is also the kind that is triggered by some event from outside, a traumatic experience, like having to fight for your country and seeing friends being blown up, and children who are constantly having air raid practices in their schoolrooms, who are constantly having news. Where's their father? Has he telephoned today? Has he called or texted? And it's a Monday morning, so I suppose there'll be commuter traffic and general busyness. I mean, we could be going through Slough, couldn't we? This comes quite a shock to me, to realise how incredibly close to the centre of the capital Putin's invasion force came. They were within an ace of capturing the capital, and we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be talking about it, and presumably the world would have accepted Putin's victory and moved on and shaken their heads and said it was very sad, and Zelensky would probably have been Either he managed to escape or he would have been disappeared. They know what an enemy they're facing. You know, their grandparents will tell them what it was like when Stalin imposed his will on Ukraine. There was a famine to beat all famines, and millions of Ukrainians died at their hands, and unbelievable suffering the Ukrainian people have undergone. There's so much within the race memory of the Ukrainians that tells them that the only possible future for them is one of independence in which they rule themselves. And so therefore the very thought that the Russians could ever be in charge again, they would, I suspect they would fight to the last man virtually.
After a 12-hour journey, I arrive at Kyiv's main station, the scene of so much heartache earlier in the war when families were torn apart. This morning, it's surprisingly normal and calm. I'm on my way to Dobrotut Hospital to meet orthopedic surgeon Oksana Mironenko in her operating theatre.
I like your tattoo, it's good.
First, I'm introduced to Horace, the patient who will undergo surgery.
So, Horace, you injured your arm? Which arm?
У мене травмовані обидві руки, але оперувати будуть ліву.
And was this an explosion, a missile or a sniper?
Це був прицільний вогонь.
So you understand what is happening to you?
Ну так.
And are you in pain?
Ну, ліва рука майже не працездатна поки.
As a medic yourself, what are the main sorts of injuries that you have to deal with?
Контузії. Контузії та уламки.
And do you notice that some people have mental health problems as well as physical health?
Тому що є люди, які з тим працюють. Тобто є спеціалісти, які займаються морально-психологічним станом бійців. Мене звати Орес, я ваш пацієнт.
Свого хірурга знаєте?
Оксана Андріївна.
You never get used to the sight of a vigorous human being under the ether, as they used to say, but whatever the chemicals are that puts you out, there's something so helpless, and the body becomes such a sort of great floppy mass, and it allows the surgeons to do what they're doing.
Oksana's speciality is microsurgery on the hand, but as a result of the war, most of her time is now spent resculpting amputations so the prosthetics fit better, or in Horace's case, trying to patch up his radial nerve, which has been severed.
Oh, I'm a bit squeamish. Yeah. I think I might actually, because I'll let you get all the pictures you need. Oksana, I've just watched you perform an operation. A success?
In peripheral neurosurgery, there is no successful variance just now. We should wait for the results. So I don't know, I hope.
And which part of Ukraine do you come from yourself?
I'm from Lugansk.
And I understand that you've had quite an experience in this last year and a half since the war began.
Yes, I lost my house twice and my mom was killed. My mama was killed.
Yeah. Do you think you will forgive the Russians for
No.
their action? Never. There's too evil, too terrible, the things you've seen?
I think all they do with Ukrainian people and all people that they fight all of this, it's very bad, very hard things, and I hope that all Russia will disappear.
Do you think there's a danger of the Ukrainian people getting tired?
I see now a lot of people are tired from the war. I don't want to do nothing, and they want to take rest or do something, just not help or not fight. I don't understand them. But I don't want to speak with people who are tired from war. It's uncomfortable for me, so I try to avoid them.
After the operation, Oksana introduces me to two of her former patients, Wikipedia and Boychik, who each lost a leg in the siege of Mariupol.
I mean, I've always thought, when I've seen people with it, that it's one thing to have the leg amputated, that's a serious thing, but also it's where the prosthetic, where the new leg meets the stump, the old leg. It itches, it's painful, yeah?
Yeah, it's a little bit painful, but very important for me to walk without anything, without crutches, without canes. That's why when we made this socket for prosthetic, we tried to make this as tight as we can.
Yeah.
Have more control for walking without anything. So for me, it's important.
Did you get help with your mental recovery as well as your physical recovery? Did you get advice and help?
First of all, I'm from Odessa, that's why I like to think about this. Like, I don't lost my leg. I exchanged my leg for benefits, for free parking. So,
Very good, very good.
Some of the weapons that inflicted the pain and wanton destruction are on display in the square outside St. Michael's Monastery. I'm here to meet Nikita Titov, a famous Ukrainian artist who, like me, suffers from bipolar disorder.
Nikita!
His friend, neurosurgeon Andrei Mizak, will be my translator.
That's just so few lines.
Майже, так.
Thank you so much. That is fantastic. It will take pride of place in my study. Every time I look up from writing, I will see myself and think of you. Oh, there we go. Переможу.
Перемоги нам всім.
Перемогу.
Victory to us all.
Victory to us all. That's very good. Very good. But do you think your happiness also is tied to the happiness of Ukraine? If, God forbid, the Russians were to succeed, would your mental health collapse, as well as all kinds of other things?
Справа не в душевному стані, справа в тому, що мій вибір – це Україна, і я навряд чи буду біжати кудись, і тому я дуже відомий художник, але моє мистецтво – це мистецтво спротиву. І я думаю, що вони будуть намагатися мене вбити, а я буду намагатися себе захистити. Але я вірю, що ми все ж таки переможемо, але так чи інакше, я просто не боюся багатьох речей.
One of the things that's very noticeable is that Ukraine has the lowest diagnosis rate. 1 in 50 are diagnosed, whereas it's 1 in 10 in most countries in the West.
На жаль, навіть люди, у яких є цей діагноз, вони теж продовжують просто усвідомити те, що у тебе є така хвороба, прийняти її і навіть бути їй вдячним, але це дуже складний шлях. І для цього у нас суспільство ще недостатньо готове, тому що наша психіатрія, вона все ж таки вийшла із радянської в чомусь каральної психіатрії.
Because the Soviets used psychiatry as a political tool of
Але я можу перемогти і депресію, і війну можна, якщо ти маєш одне важливе в собі річ і слово, таке як надія. І ваш приїзд сюди дав дуже багатьом надію. Ми знаємо, що ми переможемо, але нам...
Oh, thank you.
І мій меседж – просто залишайтесь людьми.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nikita. Ay, дякую.
Later that evening, I meet up with Andrei.
So, Andrei, how would you say the health service of Ukraine, in both its private and nationalized forms, is coping?
Mental health is a complete novelty for Ukrainian society. Even 10-15 years ago, we never even dared to discuss about to discuss mental issues.
Because it seemed like weakness.
It seemed like a taboo,
Yes.
like weakness.
Yes.
You're not masculine enough. You're not tough enough. And we desperately need experience of our Western colleagues to support us and to get to the next ladder. Now, because a part of our society shouted all the time that we need to be with civilized world. And the other part of our society wanted to join Russia and looked east all the time. And we didn't have enough strength, and we didn't. Our elite, political elite, was not responsible enough to find the right direction. And now we pay the bitter price now.
It's estimated that over 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed or wounded so far in this war. Mladena Kachuret's husband was killed in the Battle of Bakhmut. This is the first time she's talked about his death.
Perhaps the worst injury of all is for those left behind who lost someone. And that's your story, yes?
Yeah.
You lost your husband.
Just a couple of weeks ago.
That recently. So it's very raw. It still keeps you awake.
Yeah, it is. Well, actually, I just got here. I was back home in his hometown where we got the funeral.
Was he what you might call an obvious type to join an army, a military
no.
sort of person?
He is a philosopher. He graduated from the philosophy faculty in Kyiv Mohyla Academy. Culture studies.
Right.
Violence was never his philosophy, and violence was never kind of means for him to solve any kind of problem.
No.
He's just an anti-violent person, like the kindest person I know. Contrary to me, because I'm like kind of very active and I'm ready to fight all the time. So he was just like all the time he was putting me back and just calming me down and saying that there is no reasons to to be aggressive or to solve the problems with violence or fights or whatever. And that's how we raised our daughter.
So you have a daughter. How old is she?
She's 11.
So old enough to be distraught.
She is actually, even now, she's very close with him.
So do you, I know it's still so recent, but do you try to talk about him and keep him alive in conversation, and it's not...
She keeps texting him in WhatsApp. And she actually, what she said to me about 5 days ago, that she misses him and she really doesn't want him to come in her dreams, but she wants him to reply on her messages and or like to call her back.
I think that's a very good instinct for her to do that, isn't it? To keep remembering him like that.
I don't know how easy it is for her. Is it a protective mechanism, or she just like, just tries to not to lose, I think. Not to lose him.
Yes. So for you, maybe one of the best things that could happen is something that's quite controversial in some parts of the world, which is for Ukraine to join the EU and NATO, so that it's this idea of looking towards Russia.
I really hope that Ukraine will join the EU and NATO, but I don't think this is the best thing personally for me, because personally for me the bad thing would be if he came back alive.
Yeah.
And
yes, of
so
course.
there is no kind of satisfaction or substitute feeling or whatever.
Do you blame Putin and Russia?
I blame Russia. I blame Russians, every single f***ing Russian, because this is not just the responsibility of Putin or some kind of situation.
No.
This is the direct responsibility of every Russian citizen who let Putin be the president, who led the dictatorship, who did nothing for preventing the war, or did not enough for preventing the war. he died for the values, for our country, for all those people who are just like walking around here, you know, enjoying the day in the park.
So many men have already died in this war, and for each of them, a family is left devastated. And much like Britain after the First World War, the number of widows is spiraling. Maria Hraba's husband was killed on the front line 9 months ago while he was serving with his brother Nazar, a well-known Ukrainian actor.
It's like my brother was saying, I'm not going to fight there for borders or language. I'm going to fight for my mom, me, and his wife.
It was a question of dignity.
Yes.
Like he couldn't like stay apart. I don't know. He couldn't like ignore that. He always he feels like he always can do more, be more useful. That was his words always.
And what was his name?
Ilya.
And how long had you been married when he joined the army?
Not so long. We got married during
Just
the war.
last summer?
Yeah, last summer. The day before war, we were living like our casual life. Ilya was musician. Like I have my job. We have like very cozy apartment and like big plans for future. And now there's nothing left. And I don't know. I don't know. I still don't know.
You
like
don't know?
That was my first question.
What do I do now?
Yes, he was my soulmate, and that's not only words because we actually were talking about it that we are soulmates. And when you ask me about my future, I don't know because like I'm lost. I'm trying my best to do like everything right. I don't know how. But I'm trying to make his life even more meaningful.
Yes. What happened to your brother exactly?
A tank.
A tank?
Yes. He was one of the best from our unit.
Was he older than you or younger than you?
Older than.
He was your big brother?
Yeah.
And
the day that happened, we were together at the front line, and I got injury, a grenade shot right here.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
And that took you out of combat?
Yes. When I was in hospital, I had call at 1 a.m. from my commander. He was saying, Nazar, I'm sorry, we couldn't save him. My world just fell apart.
Така, братці, війна. Така, братці, війна.
As a person, he was a much better than me.
Oh, you mustn't say
no,
that.
No. In any ways. I'm not saying this because I'm waiting for some kind of like to calm me down or to say something for me, but I could say that without any doubts as a person who was 10,000 times better than me.
He was a really great guy.
Yeah.
Let's say that. Let's say that he was a great guy in his way and you're a great guy in your way. But will you ever forgive the Russians for what they've done by invading?
No. That's like I maybe I can't say it in English properly, but I don't want to focus on them.
No.
They like don't deserve that. I don't think about them.
No.
For me, there's nobody out there.
Yeah.
That's why I stay in Ukraine, because I can't meet any Russians.
Yeah.
I'm just too afraid to go abroad because
if you saw a Russian,
if I will see a Russian, if I will hear like glory to Russia or some kind of that shit, I just don't know what is gonna happen to me and that guy. So.
One of the surprises of Kyiv is the grandeur of the architecture, and another is the quality of their bars. I descend into the lower depths of Diktat to meet members of the Azov Brigade.
Aha! Hi. Hello, I'm Stephen. You are?
I'm Michael.
Michael, Mikhailo, hello.
Captured by the Russians during the siege of Mariupol, they were later released in a POW exchange.
So Mariupol, the key to the whole of Ukraine, yeah?
Ну, на тому етапі це була дуже сильна перепона для росіян. І я також підтримую Ростика. Ну, ми цим надали можливість трохи згуртуватися в країні для того, щоб можна було зробити відсіч. Якщо б Маріуполь пав, як вони хотіли, там, за 1-2 дні, то вся ця навала, вона пішла б куди? Вона пішла б на Київ. І ну, мені особисто невідомо, чим би все це скінчилося. А так ми на себе відтягли і дуже великі сили Росії.
And you two were captured, is that correct?
Так.
Mm-hmm. For how long were you held by the Russians?
123 дні.
Do you still have nightmares about your 123 days in captivity?
Ну, буває. Саме такий жуткий кошмар, коли ти у вісні в тому ж стані, коли ти розумієш, що зараз буде полон. Для мене це саме такий жуткий кошмар. Саме з полону такого в мене нічого не снилось.
And you, Rostik? Кошмари?
Ми працюємо. Я думаю, що в мене, що в Міші, там кошмари – це один раз за весь час або 2 рази. А він просто думає про те, що він просто хоче поспати, і коли він лягає спати, він просто вирубається, спить.
Putin and his propaganda machine like to suggest to the world that the Azov Brigade is somehow neo-Nazi and so forth. Did this mean your treatment was especially cruel when you were a prisoner of war? You were laughing.
Дивіться, ми в полоні відчували таку цікаву штуку, що коли росіяни дивилися на людину, яка потрапляла в полон, перше, що вони хотіли побачити, це його татуювання. Так от, росіяни, вони взагалі дупля не відбивають в різниці між скандинавськими рунами і нацистською символікою.
So they were looking to prove what they already believed.
Абсолютно. Будь-яка людина, на тілі якої є татуювання, для них вже по замовченню це нацист, фашист і все таке інше.
I'm on my way to the golden-domed Cathedral of San Sofia, the heart of the nation, where I'm joining First Lady Olena Zelenska to co-host this summit on mental health. Leaders, dignitaries, celebrities and mental health experts from all over the world have made the long journey here to participate.
Володимир Зеленський.
Слава Україні! Дуже дякую.
Перша леді України Олена Зеленська.
Добрий день. Тож, вітаю всіх на 3-му саміті перших леді та джентльменів. В основі нашої цінності – людське життя. А в основі людського життя завжди стоїть любов. І секрет нашої стійкості в любові. В любові до своїх дітей, батьків, коханих, друзів, до свого дому, своєї вулиці, села, міста, країни, своєї справи, своєї мрії. Саме любов дає сили боротися, тримати зброю, терпіти, чекати, страждати і не зламатися.
It is our war. It is the war of Ukraine, but it's also the war of Europe. Putin is a danger for all Europe and the whole world. And we have to stop him here. Or we have to help Ukrainians to stop him. If not, the consequences will be incalculable in Europe and beyond. Imagine 1 minute that Putin wins. It's a green light for China in Taiwan. It's a green light for Erdogan in Greece. It's a green line for the Iranian regime for nuclear weapons for Baghdad. And so it's a green line for Daesh, who will find free, open bar. If Putin won, he cannot win. If he did win in Ukraine, it will be open bar for all the dictators in the world.
Hey, Madame Zelensky, I'm Stephen.
I'm Elena. I'm so happy to see you.
You are so kind, thank you. I know, well, we'll talk about it. But if you could maybe sit, if all is well. Yeah. I wondered if the state has a way of spreading across the population that it's okay to talk about fragility, to talk about the other side of the summit, that it's okay to be weak or seem weak, that actually that's being strong.
Ми намагаємося це робити. Моє особисте переконання в тому, що мати сміливість говорити про свою слабкість – це ще більша сміливість, ніж просто бути сміливим. Тому ми намагаємося зробити так, щоб це було не соромно більше. На жаль, ця проблема досить стигматизована не тільки в Україні, а в багатьох країнах. І вважається, що якщо ти сильна людина, ти не будеш жалітися. Але це не жалітися, це визнати, що тобі потрібна допомога для того, щоб бути далі.
I know the secret of your family is that Mr. Zelensky did not tell you that, even that he was going to marry you, and then he didn't tell you he was going to run for president.
Yeah,
you
he
had
didn't.
to find out from someone else.
He was afraid.
And when this invasion came, did he tell you, we're going to stay?
No.
We're going to... He didn't. Amazing. How you put up with that, I cannot imagine. But he must obviously trust you immensely to know that even though he doesn't share with you what he's going to do, you will follow. But follow actively, not passively.
Його б'є це життя. Якщо я можу підставити плече, я буду підставляти. Ми дійсно друзі, тому це нам допомагає. І навіщо йому розповідати якісь мені речі, які я знаю і сама відчуваю, і готуюся внутрішньо. Зараз це найкращий наш вибір, президент, тому що для того, щоб продовжувати вести цю боротьбу, потрібно дуже багато енергії. І це перевага його віку, що він її ще поки що має. І я сподіваюся, що він буде її мати ще довго. У мене немає мрії, щоб він довго був президентом України.
One of the interesting pieces of research that has come out, that was commissioned for your summit, is that the 18 to 30-year group, while it is the most affected by mental health conditions, is also the most positive and the most optimistic about the future, which is very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Вайб, він кудись зникає. Ти розумієш, що в принципі все одно, живучи тут, ти кожного життя маєш ризик загинути. Тобто ми намагаємося про це не думати. Намагалися відхраскатися від хімії, тому що ми не вважали, що вона нам в житті знадобиться. А тут взагалі не знаєш, що тобі, чи видаться тобі можливість взагалі ці знання колись там використати. Але в молоді, мені здається, можливо, я не права, але в них є особлива така перевага, тому що вони всі, в принципі, в цей час шукають свою людину, шукають кохання.
Well, everybody experiences something for the first time. You know, my first pony, my first Sony, my first No, I shan't say that. But, you know, all the things we experienced for the first time. And I've lived a lot of years on this planet before experiencing my first air raid, but here it is, in a hotel in Kyiv at, what time is it, 5:03 in the morning. Went off at about 4:45. Very polite voice telling us to go down to the air raid, so we shuffled out of our hotel rooms. And here we are. We've got lounges. There's also an app. The app reminds me that the alarm is still going on, and that'll wake you up if nothing else does. So Kyiv at war has embraced the 21st century and its technology, but otherwise I suppose it isn't that far different from the air raids my mother and father experienced when they were young in the Second World War during the Blitz, and they were both in London.
The accusations of Nazism, which Putin used as a pretext for the invasion, have a historical precedent. During World War II, some Ukrainians did side with the Germans against the Russians, such was their hatred of the Soviet Union and the suffering caused by the famine of the 1930s. But the narrative, as ever, is complicated. But not so on the outskirts of Kyiv, at the Holocaust Memorial at Babyn Yar. During one weekend in September 1941, over 33,000 Jewish people were murdered here by the German SS. Over the next 2 years of Nazi occupation, prisoners of war, Romani, Ukrainian nationalists, the mentally handicapped, anyone considered an enemy of the Third Reich, and many more Jews were murdered.
Ukraine has seen more than its fair share of horrors in the last 150 years or so. But this place, Babyn Yar, without trying to sound too clever, is a kind of image of it all. Bodies tumbling in their thousands, suffocating each other, covering each other up, and then eventually being incinerated in the ash cast to the wind, hoping that the memory of all these lives will be cast to the wind too. These were real people, tens of thousands of them. But this country's at war again. Terrible things are beginning to happen, and they're the gateway to more terrible things.
After the somber reflections of Ukraine's painful past, I'm tempted to lighten the mood by accepting an invitation by Vasyl Baidak, a comedian whom I met at the summit, to join him at his favorite club.
Oh my God! The thing I've seen more than anything else is the thing that this club is dedicated to, and that is laughter. It astonishes me. But everywhere I saw laughter. I spoke to two boys who had lost a leg each, and they had a new prosthetic leg. And they were laughing and laughing. One of them had got them in America. He'd put an American sock on. He'd put a speaker in his knee, with one of those JBL Bluetooth speakers in his knee, and I asked him why, and he said, because I can. And it almost made me cry, like the best laughter does. To think, all my life I've tried to persuade people that laughter is the most powerful, unique, identifying weapon that human beings have. And now at last you can prove it, and in order to prove it you have to go to war. You have to go to war to realize that laughter is part of your armory. But laughter gives you energy. Laughter gives you a spring in your step. Laughter makes you kings and queens of the world. It means you do go on. It means you say, in the politest Ukrainian way, you. We will go on. We will never stop. Slava Ukraine, as you like to say. Vasil, I have a theory about countries. Most people think the way to know a country is the food or the music. They'll put one or other first, the music, maybe the food. There's the dress, I suppose, how people dress. But for me, it's comedy.
Yeah.
For me, that is the... how would you characterize Ukrainian comedy?
Ooh, it's comedy for survive.
Right.
Is that's surviving comedy.
Has that changed? Is that more so now because of the war, or has that always been the mark of Ukrainian comedy?
Yeah, and I think it's always like this because when it's hard, Ukrainians make some jokes, and it's different jokes, and it's dark or white jokes, but it's everywhere. Every time it's joking. We are joking.
You said no, comedy is not a weapon.
Yeah, not a weapon.
So
F-16, if planes and
that's a weapon.
Yeah, that's a weapon, and that's why we have no this weapon. It's a humor.
Yeah.
From the relaxed atmosphere of the basement club, I make the journey up to heavily fortified presidential offices.
I've been practicing. It's very good to meet you, sir.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, please.
In England, they had the Joker, and which is, you know, a fool, as Shakespeare would call him a fool, who would say to the king, you know, you're an idiot or something, to remind people of power, not to become paranoid, arrogant.
Yes.
I'm not suggesting you are becoming paranoid.
I'm hearing some
no.
Some interesting messages.
but you know, because I remember a friend of mine worked with Robert Redford, the actor, and I said to him, "What's Robert Redford like?" He said, "Stephen, what would you be like if for 30 years you had never heard the word no?" And I wondered if you thought about it, if you have someone who says to you, no, maybe it's Madame Zelenska, because she's...
Yes, but you know that I will never have any 30 years in this cabinet. No,
hearing the word no.
It's not for me.
Yeah.
It's not for me and not for her.
No, exactly. But it is
important that it's not for her.
Exactly.
Yes.
Is it generally the case that, say, the great Russian authors, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, Pushkin and so on, that they're not being sold in bookshops, that generally Russian culture is...
People don't want.
They don't want it, do they?
They don't want. There are a lot of books.
No.
They are in English, in Ukrainian. Mostly people. That is the life. People for today. People hate everything.
Yeah.
Which is connecting with the Russia. And
I've noticed, which is interesting also, that I think is wise, is people don't even want to say the name of the leader of that country. It's you just say the enemy, you know, them.
Yes,
them.
They don't want.
You don't want to give them the dignity of a name and a position. Yeah.
That is the result of the war.
Of
aggression, of Russian aggression.
I did tell a joke at the comedy club. Is if Putin and Medvedev were on the top of St. Basil's and they fell off, which one would hit the ground first? Do you know?
No.
Who gives a That's the joke.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great pleasure.
Slava Ukraini.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best.
Goodbye.
President Zelensky has an unbelievably positive attitude, and I think his background in comedy has no doubt helped him cope. But then he has no real alternative. This resilience of the Ukrainians is born out of necessity, and tragically their suffering over the last century has given them plenty of practice. The physical wounds of this war will be evident for a generation to come. The mental scars will take a lot longer to heal. But I'm encouraged by their willingness to talk about it. And that is the most important first step.